Yes. This is about the recent article that was in the New York Times about the genetically modified foods. It was kind of a pro-GMO article, which really concerned me because it was in the New York Times. But there was...
New York doesn't get it right all the time.
Okay. Well, there was a professor, Pam Ronald, plant pathology professor at the University of California, and she said that we, the non-GMO supporters, are ignoring decades of scientific studies demonstrating the safety and wide-reaching benefits of genetically engineered foods. Now, I mean, why? How can she write that? And
it's America. Yeah, well, the New York Times has been a pro-GM outfit for many, many years. Okay. And I squared off with Pam Ronald on Dr. Oz a couple of years ago. She is a renowned pro-biotech advocate. I mentioned her book as, one of the Bill Gates' references as to why he's so pro-GMO. It's an easily dismembered book. All of her references are easily dismissed because they're not based on real independent science. They're based on the myth making, and she is one of the speakers. Now, I was told by someone in an email from Hawaii that the reporter from the New York Times essentially went to Hawaii to write an article with her agenda intact, and so she kept looking for a story that gave the pro-GM agenda, and then found a minority member of the council that had actually banned the planting of GMOs. This person was against it, so she picked up on this person and used him as the protagonist. But there was three letters to the editor written in the Times that blasted the article, and the article was really pathetic. And one of the people that blasted it was Dr. David Schubert, because the article said that there's a consensus for safety. Now, there's hundreds of doctors that have signed petitions, scientists that say there's no consensus for safety. And Dr. David Schubert is a senior scientist at the Salk Institute, and he said there's no consensus for safety, among other things. And, I mean, I deal with this all the time where, that article tried to degrade me or discredit me as well. I actually haven't read the article, haven't gotten to it yet. It's like I don't really pay attention to those because there's so many of them. There's so many of them, and it's like, from my mind, yes, they're going to get a bunch of people to believe it, but we don't need to get the majority of Americans on our side. We just need a certain percentage of people avoiding GMOs, and they're gone. And the people that we're going to, the moms, the healthcare professionals, the health-conscious shoppers, the sick people, certain religious people, they really listen to the truth that we gave out yesterday, for example. And so it's like these guys are up against the wall. They're spending an unprecedented amount of money now trying to get some kind of foothold in a deteriorating consciousness. So yesterday, they posted something in some digital magazine offering media an opportunity to debunk me with the real experts. So they've been attacking me as well, and then they had this whole sort of half-truth bio about me that is bizarre. And I look at it and go, I must be doing something right.
Thank you. Thank you.
But may I add a comment, if I may? The big book I wrote, The Secret History of the War on Cancer, documented a pattern of deceit, dismissal, and denial with respect to tobacco that started in the 1930s when the German and Argentinian governments had national institutes to study tobacco hazards. This is before the internet, so nobody's ever heard of it unless you've read my big book. And those governments knew then that smoking was bad for health. This is the 1930s. What happened after the war was that scientists working for the tobacco industry and the U.S. government, who were also working for the asbestos industry and the benzene industry, went to Germany, gathered up all the data that existed on this, which I found sometimes in the Cleveland or in Cincinnati buried in files, And nobody in the public understood that the dangers of tobacco and asbestos and benzene and vinyl chloride were known for decades before the public became aware of it. I am not an expert on GMOs, but I know enough that if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. And this is a duck in the sense that this example here, the story that you just relayed from the New York Times, industry pays millions of dollars to scientific experts, and they may be well-meaning. Let's give them the possibility that they may be well-meaning. They're often naive, unless they're really hired guns, and they are hired guns sometimes. And there is legitimate scientific complexity about these issues. Let's be clear. There's a lot of complicated science here, and a lot of it remains very confusing, certainly in the area of GMOs, certainly in the area of cell phone safety. Most of you have never had any idea that a cell phone is a two-way microwave radio. If somebody has said to you, here, you're going to give a microwave radio to your baby as a pacifier, people would go, what? They wouldn't do it. So even the name of what they call the product becomes part of the whole system. So I would go back to you and I would say, I think your strongest argument so far is that the Europeans say no. So are they all just foolish? Or do they know something that we need to find out? And then the fact that the New York Times runs articles like this is a sad reflection of the effectiveness of a strategy that was first honed for tobacco and refined with asbestos, which basically says where there's scientific evidence of concern, manufacture doubt. If you can create doubt in the public mind, doubt becomes your product. And as long as people aren't sure that something's a problem, well, it's much more convenient to continue consuming things. Let me just share one other thought. When Bella Abzug was alive, I was privileged to work with her, although given the way she treated her friends, I was glad I wasn't her enemy. But Bella was a brilliant woman, and she said we needed girl cots. Boycotts say no. Girl cots say yes. We demand the right to buy food that is not genetically modified. We demand the right to have safer cell phones and technology in our homes for our children. And if we create the market, Cheerios, if people rally around buying Cheerios that's not GMO, it's a very powerful message. And the market does work. In women's cosmetics now, there's a whole bunch of companies that are making less toxic cosmetics. Women are not going to give up cosmetics. You know, some of us use a lot less than we used to, but you're still finding a market for safer things is going to be very important and very attractive. And using market forces in a constructive way here with girl cots is, I think, one of your strongest arguments on the GMO. So maybe we can try it.
Boy, was Bella, isn't that a great word? Girl cots? I think I've had one imposed on me since I've been married.